Pilots trade close calls the way kids trade baseball cards. It's a part of life. It's how you cope. Because somewhere in your unit or a friend's unit, there will be an engine fire, or a bad catapult, or gear that doesn't come down. Sometimes that ends in a crash, and sometimes it's bad. And because of that, every day of every mission is a day you train for. The day it happens to you. That's what this remarkable series is about. Here you'll see the world of military flight the way the pilots do. The good days and the bad ones. The near misses and the close calls. You can see the nuts and bolts of hydraulics and engine parts somewhere else. Here, you will come face to face with your very mortality. This is a series created by fighter pilots. Little wonder they call it the challenge of flight. Takeoffs and landings are the most trying moments of flight. When problems arise, they often overcome the very airworthiness of your jet in a matter of seconds. To survive, you have to make instantaneous decisions. Your job is simple, and it comes down to this. You don't think, you act. If you're quick, and the good Lord is willing, you will live to fly another day.
This F-8F, in an almost identical situation, is saved by the extra height of the carrier deck. Room to push the nose down and gain precious lift.
There is a time when the only thing you have left is the ejection seat. As your options shut down, this safety system of last resort may be the only choice you have. While often the saving grace, the ejection seat is not without risks of its own making. Naval aviation stands alone. Unlike the Air Force, aviators that base on an aircraft carrier live with a compelling force that drives their training, their combat readiness, and their very lives aboard the ship. It is this: no matter how bad it gets, you have to get back on board. Why? Because there's nowhere else to go.
Weaving through a seemingly impassable jam of crew and aircraft and bringing the nose gear to within inches of the deck edge all seems impossible to the distant observer. Survival for the flight deck personnel means keeping your head on a swivel, your hands close to your body, and your exposure on the deck limited to the absolute minimum.
The world of military aviation is vast. The experiences of one pilot may be entirely unique from the experiences of a dozen others. Canopies Up is an in-depth, first-person accounting of the many challenges military aviators face. From jumbo cargo jets to the F-117 Stealth, frontline pilots speak of the toughest hurdles they face. What they say is sometimes surprising.
Bulldog Golf 35 descending to base plus 13. Contact the traffic 10 on windows.
Copy. Contact. Copy Golf. 763 is up. 763, copy.
There's definitely personality differences, no doubt. It starts right in pilot training. It's not by chance that a guy gets into a fighter. It's based on his performance, and it's also based, just on his personality.
The guys at the bottom of the list usually get some sort of heavy, and the guys at the top of the list either get fighters or are instructor pilots.
If you're going to strap on an F-16 and go up there by yourself and successfully penetrate enemy airspace and avoid their defenses and avoid their other aircraft and their missiles and everything else and get to the target and put your ordnance on target and then come back and survive, you better be cocky or you're probably not going to be able to do it.
Descending now. Thanks,
In the heat of combat, nothing is more frustrating or deadly than engaging an enemy that outperforms you. Those are things called limits. Limits on airspeed, G-forces, turn rates, and more. Exceed a limit and you kill yourself. Push the limits back and you build an airplane that can kill the enemy. One finds the limits of flight in the art of the very real and very dangerous process called flight testing.
Remotely powered vehicles, RPVs, take the pilot out of the equation. When successfully launched, RPVs may be used for target practice, weapons delivery, or surveillance.
Few filmmakers deal with combat from a pilot's perspective. What goes on inside a pilot's head as he faces rows of SAMs and sheets of AAA? How do the stresses affect his ability as an aviator? Eagles Over the Gulf is their story, told entirely by pilots, set to the very finest footage filmed during the Gulf War.
AAA being shot at us, and you can see like snakes from the medium-sized AAA, just tracer bullets, and they look like big long snakes coming up in the air.
My wife and I had a little girl 13 days after the war started, taxiing out, and time to think about, reflect a little bit, after the first couple weeks of the war. Yeah, I thought about my little girl, wanted to make sure I got home to see her, and make sure she had a daddy to see once I got home.
The largest package I was ever involved on a runway was 16 F-16s, and we took darn near I guess I could figure out, about 5,000 feet of runway, just lining the aircraft up. So it's really neat to sit back there, let's say as number 10 or 12, and look at all these afterburners light, and it takes obviously several minutes just to get the aircraft airborne. So it's really a neat feeling to see all that kind of air power on the runway all at once. The visibility in that aircraft is unbelievable. You feel like you're almost outside. And all you're looking at, you can barely see over the nose. The wings are well behind you, so that's not in your peripheral vision. You feel like you're on the end of a pencil, and the pencil is a huge jet engine. It's still quite a feeling to go ahead and run the motor up and light the afterburner and get cruising down the runway.
You can't fly fighters without a keen appreciation for air combat. In air-to-ground and air-to-air combat, fighter pilots deal with high-speed seconds. Seconds when the enemy is in the weapon's envelope, and seconds when they're not. You only have seconds to fire a missile, and if you get close, you go to guns.
Good offer. Clear the drone.
Bullets and missiles aren't the only things that can kill you. Sometimes worse is a disastrous out of control. Pilot-induced oscillations, unrecoverable spins, massive structural failures. In training, you see footage from actual mishaps. Incredibly, we found it. It is the backbone of out of control.
Although well understood, one of the most perplexing out-of-control situations is the PIO, shorthand for pilot-induced oscillations. PIOs invariably start with some ordinary control input that for some reason triggers a chain of events that leaves the airplane almost completely uncontrollable, jerking up and down perilously close to a stall. They are perplexing because they come on without any warning, and they strike with startling velocity. The recovery? Freeze the stick slightly aft of neutral.
Getting through to the target and destroying it is the name of the game. But you face an enemy that wants to blow you out of the sky. There will be a gauntlet of AAA, SAMs, ground fire, dust, confusion, and still a full workload in the cockpit. This task-saturated environment is completely unforgiving. It is, though, the way of life when you're getting in and getting out.
Item away.
Sadly, things don't always work as they should. In this next sequence, you'll see the bombs that turn out to be duds, the missiles that skip, canisters that break up in midair, and the pilot, too focused on the bomb run, flying the jet into the ground.
Fighter pilots study their opponents the way football players study game films. Adversary Air is one such game film. In it, you will see the flight capabilities of the aircraft we may one day face.
Not to be outdone is the MiG-29 Fulcrum. Similar in size and performance to our F-18 Hornets, the Fulcrum first flew in 1977 and has been exported to at least 10 nations, including North Korea, Syria, Iraq, Czechoslovakia, and India. Our performer today lights up the afterburners, pops the brakes, and gets the act up and flying with minimum runway roll. This is an aggressive display and says much about the mindset of the Russian fighter pilot. From takeoff, he flies a powerful aerobatic display, flown almost entirely in afterburner, including prolonged knife-edge passes and high G turns.
Nothing wears on a pilot more than combat. Short mission or long, it is exhausting. Whispers of Death is one of our most popular episodes because of our style of editing. In it, we have packed unrelenting images of World War II air-to-air and air-to-ground dogfighting and strafing runs. You will feel the wear and tear even now, some 50 years later. Dangerous, exhilarating, beautiful. It's the challenge of flight.